try to remember the three. Question for Jorge. You talk about the history, and one of the challenges that we have in modern time, that we look at history as facts, but history is receptive to multiple interpretations, and I would further say even imaginative interpretation, which sometimes we shy away from it because we treat history as true fact. So I want to have a response to that, but before I move on, a question to both of you. Elizabeth talked about power. One of the things that I would love for someone actually to find different words in different languages. Okay. The word power is very deceiving, and it's absolutely it's a tyranny. Power is treated as commodity. I have power, you use power, I can take your power away. Versus the notion of strength, which I think you talked about it very eloquently. You didn't necessarily say strength. Strength can never be taken away. It's self-generated, autobiotic kind of quality that can never be taken away. That's why power with actual apart against strength. This is taking place in your country. Were you discussing that? It's also taking place in Egypt. The uprising is not really one day, it's an ongoing process, which really about the strength, not power. So I'm going to invite you to consider just opposing the two terms. Power is not synonymous with strength. This, for both of you, and I'm very familiar with Dussel. How you say the name again? Dussel. Enrique Dussel. He's wonderful. So I think the whole idea about strength versus power. Anyway, so I have both questions.
Okay, I will start. So I think that the idea of history is just more referred to some compositional facts. Because from the very beginning it was about linkages between different narratives. Narratives, of course, they are interpretations. Yeah? And but what I wanted to say that exactly this idea of moral history is forced succession between narratives that would have different directions and that would be centered not on some political issues but on ethical. Actually, as usual narratives are centered. And actually, myself, I can't comment because I never understood history as facts, and I think even historians, they don't have this imagination that something really happened and now they just tell what happened. Yeah, because I would say that even Ranke, who is usually used to, even he was much more complicated by saying secondly gelesen and it is not so simple because in his opinion also history was the first all interpretation and like similarly like in Rosen. So I would say in modern time and nowadays, of course, if we look at this idea of history seriously, like in the school, then it's impossible to confuse it with the true facts of past. Yeah, so that would be my answer.
Okay. Would you like to say something about it?
About what?
What's okay?
Oh, no, don't worry. Yeah, I'm thinking of other things.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Thank you for that. I really have, what you're proposing about power and strength, I think is worth considering. I am inclined to actually want to say power, indeed, for a few reasons. If for no other reason than the fact that it has been referred as that. First, the relationship between tactic and strategy is considered a relationship between two types of power. And I think that in this case that's completely valid. The two types of power, the power of the army versus the power of the guerrilla, or the power of those with power and the power of those without legitimate power. So two types of power, one that is organized and can project and plan, and another that sees the moment. Two different forms of engagement. That's one thing. The other reference, there are a few. The other reference is Gene Sharp. Gene Sharp, theorist of nonviolence. Of course, Gene Sharp was very important in the Egyptian uprising. Actually, he was very involved. And Gene Sharp points out that for him there was an aha moment in his life, or a moment of revelation, when he, after studying violence and power, he understood that, he's talking about dictatorships, that dictatorships require what he called pillars of power in order to be. And he argues that even the crassest, most bloody dictatorship requires the cooperation of the citizenship. And therefore, to undermine the dictatorship implies to taking away the pillars. In his view, taking away the pillars means not destroying them, but kind of like distributing them differently. Kind of like other people, or in other way, or in a horizontal way. So for me, it seems fairly valid. Also, well, I would just say that
very quickly here, just very quickly. What I got from you saying,
yeah.
you're sitting on the moon, and the moon, and on the moon, and
Oh, the mule, right.
facing the
Yes.
army with the gun.
Yes.
Your strengths actually disarm him, disarm his power. So I'm not negating, I'm not actually saying that power is not good, but I'm saying that strength actually can disarm power. Power is almost like commodity. Your strength was initiated from you, and that's for me was wonderful, to disarm power. That's what I'm really saying.
Thank you, but for
Yeah, there is something related to power that that I want to say. That is that the power that I really am interested. Actually, I wrote a paper on that. Is the power of structural injustice. You know, it's a power that is embedded into social structures. You know, and it works through the distortion of subjectivity. And so that's the reason why, for example, in the Levinas case, you know, Dussel says, oh, we are the Latin American order, you know. And actually, I said my professor Horowitz in York University, I am the Latin American order. And he told me, you know, you are other Latin American. And then, you know, the thing is the following, is that somehow we Latin American, Luis Villoro, the Mexican philosopher, said that is the original moral experience in Latin America is the concrete witnessing of unjust suffering, gratuitous suffering, you know. And so, how do you help to deal with that, you know? And it's just by distorting your subjectivity, you know. Somehow the society, the practices and things like that help to overcome or suppress those calls from your subjectivity in order to accommodate to the system, you know. So I guess that this is the power we need to deal with, you know. And this, of course, it expresses itself in direct financing of violence. But the problem we need to deal with in Latin America is that power embedded in social structure, like ideological power. And so at this point, I guess that we need first to be aware of those structures of power in order to counteract that. And so I guess that maybe one of the possibilities is looking at this revival of indigenous systems of thought that can help us to understand other models. For example, you read the Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Quichés, you see that the gods create human beings in order to get feed back by the human being. So that means a sense of reciprocity, you know? Different than that sense of the God that secularizes itself as the human being has all the powers, like that, you know? And so, for example, another sense of memory, for example, belongs to the Mother Earth, and they are incorporating new ideas in order to counteract those structures of power. For example, the rise of Mother Nature in Ecuador, you know? Of course, it's a different model because you say, oh my goodness, rights of nature? We are thinking about the subjective rights, how the earth can. But you know, when you see the indigenous worldviews, you see that there is a respect for earth, and we cannot sell our model because it has a different sense. So I guess that is a way of counteract that symbolic, that everyday power that distorts human society.
Thank you, Jorge. The last question for this session. Unfortunately, please.
Well, I think, Elizabeth, your sense and understanding the term power is a little broader than we are using. And I think it's brought us back maybe to a sense of integral personal honor of being, to the earlier sessions, this idea of our self-worth and the peace community as being authentic to itself and its world, and that is giving the power. The source of the power is their authenticity.
I would say, I guess, like Joe, that this is an investigation, and so most definitely these things need to be pushed and explored. But my sense there actually is that it was the dialogue. The dialogue is the source of the strength. It's not in any way just me. It was actually looking in the eyes of the other. Back to your original paper, it was a looking in the eyes of that actually seeing the other that gave us power and changed the logic of power as well, took us to something else. So it wasn't me, actually it was more a calling from me to him, but he responded. And he responded because I was appealing to a larger sense of communion. I immediately let him know that I understood that he was a human being. I let him know that I didn't think that he was an appendix to a gun. And that I was not going to buy it.
So you brought the world together in a different way.
Absolutely, that's what I'm talking about, world awareness. This was a moment of world awareness, of a sense of self that was not reduced to ego, because these two egos were fighting and terrified. But we brought it away from that. And in that moment there was dialogue, and there was such a thing as actually compassion, which is, to me, it was amazing. The power I had was the power of having compassion for him. That was extraordinary. For me it was extraordinary because I was terrified, but then I realized he is in a bad situation. I'm leaving, he's stuck. Even if I die, he's in a bad position. Even a worse position. And what I'm learning from the community is that what we understand by death and life as individuals is absolutely terrifying, of course. Death is an annihilation of the individual. But on the other hand, if we see this as a project, as what they call it, not my words, a life project. That's how they call it. The indigenous people call it a life project. As a part of a life project, I'm a contributor. And if I die with dignity, man, did I contribute? And actually, something else I didn't talk about in the paper, there's another passage where somebody says, you cannot kill me. Only he can kill me. The point of the matter is that takes away the power of the gun. Because there is no annihilation if you kill me.
Yeah.
There's no threat there. So it changes the power.
Thank you, Luisa. just enough for
Well,
us. Now we are going to lunch. We couldn't solve all